Hello. All right. Okay. So hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3964, probably. Yeah, 64. Today's date is 25, 26 of March 2026. It's been almost like morning at 7:44 a.m. All right. Let's just jump into the question. Let's go. All right. So the question is, what group of students are systematically falling behind in learning outcomes, and what structural factor in our system are producing those gap in India education system? Okay. Okay, what exactly is this question? Why am I asking this question to myself? This is a kind of like a simply question about Indian education system. Why am I asking this question to myself? um, I wanted to become a education minister of India in the future. Okay. And I wanted to reforms so many stuff. Like sometimes I kind of like when I said some sort of thing, I just feel like that key, like I don't know, like basically what I think is that na ki if you are planning to achieve something and that thing is a kind of like a much more bigger, then you have to prepare for this. But also how much you prepare, like it's a kind of like a thing that na ki I believe that ki, let's just say if there is a kind of like a battle about a, a kind of like an enemy, and your enemy is kind of like a way much stronger and things and that. Now if you wanted to defeat your enemy, what do I supposed to do? I have to be train myself, right? I have to train myself to kind of like actually make me capable enough to kind of like defeat my enemy and things and that. But training is not just the only one thing you really require. You need a time too. Okay, yeah. If you wanted to defeat that enemy, you have to make sure that you have a kind of like a somebody time for prepared. Okay, yeah. And how much time that you have, it's kind of like a somebody make sure that you will kind of like how much more kind of like a somebody power or strength you will kind of like accumulate it throughout this time, so that you when you defeat that enemy, you will be much stronger to hit that enemy with very strong forces and things and that. I believe that if I wanted to change the education system, which is probably almost like a 20 year ahead of my life, so right now it is really essential for me to kind of like start asking questions, so that I would be aware of that what kind of like a something problem that I will gonna deal with. Okay, yeah. And how do I supposed to be kind of like ensure that how do I supposed to solve that problem? Because like it's not a kind of like somebody it impact on just my life, it impact on everyone's life. If it mess up, oh my god, literally I was kind of like somebody like fuck up, really fuck up. Like basically is this thing now, I believe that if something wrong happened with you because of you, okay. But if something wrong happened to them because of you, it felt, oh my god. So this is the thing that I don't want. I believe in my kind of like a simply my like stuff that I wanted to think and how do I supposed to execute and things, and I believe in myself that I will gonna succeed and I will gonna kind of like provide the much more better education quality in Indian education people, Indian education student at least. And I would put all my effort and things and that. So for this enemy that I wanted to defeat after 20 years, I have to be prepared from now. That how do I supposed to be fix that thing? How do I supposed to kind of like simply solve that problems and things and that. So that's why I'm actually asking question to myself, so that I would be more aware of that and things. But the question is why? why are you kind of like simply push yourself towards this thing, like why? Like, okay, that's a really good question. Why? Like, basically is this thing na ki, like, do I really like is this kind of like like क्या तूने ठेका लिया है, like basically you are kind of like responsible for someone right and wrong? No, not at all. But like basically why am I kind of like doing this thing is because of that na ki, okay, it's a kind of like a thing that ki we are living in closed circuit kind of like a assembly. We are connected. Okay, yeah, all the humans are actually connected with each other. If one person are kind of like did something right, it impact on us too. Okay, so this is what I want. If I kind of like something change, if I kind of like somebody kind of like show them a right direction, and if they go through that path and they achieve that success will implement all around the world and things and that. Like basically is this thing na, a right decision influence people to take that right decision. Like example is this thing that na ki, let's just say is this thing that ki 50 year ago no one is kind of like doing the education, but since couple of people who kind of like started doing education and they influence the world, because of the influence other people are kind of like understand, okay, education is also really essential. So yeah, so it's a kind of like a thing is the one person is a kind of like a somebody going ahead, and it kind of like a somebody left his influence behind, and from that influence people are also chasing that influence to kind of like add much more impact and things and that. I want to do that. If I kind of like make that thing much more better, obviously I would make those people are smart, understandable, good. I don't know how do I supposed to explain this thing. Am I worth it? Like basically is this thing that na, are you, do you think that ki, like are you credible enough for that? From technical point of perspective, I am not. I haven't graduate. I been kind of like somebody very lesser score that I achieve in my education system. From technical point of perspective, I am nowhere near, literally maybe worse. Okay, yeah. But throughout this artifact journey, I've been recording this artifact, and I kind of like somebody seen the perspective of looking at the world and things and that I developed this thing inside of me by this artifact and things and that I wanted to showcase that perspective. Obviously artifact is one way that you could kind of like yeah, but artifact is just focus on you, it's not kind of like focus on your education. Okay, yeah. But is this thing that na ki, if I kind of like somebody showcase the perspective regarding about how should you supposed to be learn and things and that, then probably I think I am the credible person. Probably I'm not kind of like somebody telling myself that I'm the one who kind of like change everything. No, but I don't know. I still don't have any kind of like answer at the moment. Like whatever the decision that I took, like it always been inside of me that ki, I can do something. I can kind of like somebody like teach people kind of like something regarding about right and wrong and things like that. But I never really kind of like convince myself that ki, dude, just focus on your career. Why is that thing and that and that? And still is this thing na ki, I am like a broke, by the way. Like I'm 32. I'm living with my parents. This is my parents' house. Okay, I'm not really earning any money. Okay, and still I'm kind of like talking about being a kind of like a something education minister of India that could kind of like change the people life and things and that. Is it stupid that you are not really focused on your career and you are try to fixing other people's career? Well, yeah, that is kind of like a thing. I don't know. At the moment I don't really have any answer. Like it's kind of like a thing that na, ki, my instincts are kind of like telling me that ki, ask this question to yourself. That's it. Okay, yeah. Like probably I'm not kind of like doing any kind of like action according to it. No, just I'm just asking question to myself so that I just aware. That's it. So that's why I'm actually asking this question. All right, so let's jump right into it. So the question is that ki, what group of students are systematically falling behind in a learning outcome, and what structural factor in our system are producing those gaps in Indian education system. From looking at point of perspective, this question is a bit more difficult, but this question is a kind of like asking two question. Okay, yeah. So I'm kind of like a simplified this question in simple language. Question number one: when group of system, sorry, when group of student are falling behind. Okay, which group of student are falling behind? And second question: what structural factor are responsible for those student are falling behind? Okay, that's really good. Okay, by the way, the entire question list, like basically how I get this question. Okay, so basically it's this thing. I went to ChatGPT and kind of like say this thing that key I wanted to become Education Minister of India. Suggest me at least like 100 question. So ChatGPT kind of like suggests me hundreds of question, which is actually on the mobile phone, but I cannot do while recording anything at all. So that's why I wrote question in here. Okay, yeah. This is the book that I'm reading, How to Win and Influence People, which is really good. Okay, yeah. So step by step, I will gonna answer. Okay, first question: which group of student are falling behind? Means which group of student are falling behind in education system? What is actually factor? Okay, I'm living in India, and I'm kind of like telling from Indian context point of perspective. Okay, yeah. Throughout my entire period of life, I've been kind of like a live in city, and my education system is somewhat something better. Okay, yeah. Like basically we have a class teacher came there kind of like a teach us regarding about things and that. I don't really have any kind of like a worse experience regarding about my school. Like it's kind of like a thing that ki school is actually providing me as much as better it possible. Touch wood to my parents who kind of like a letting me to educate in this kind of like a something like in the city. Okay, and I came from Marathi medium school. Okay, but this is just my story. I never really been experience how is actually like a how is actually kind of like a something system in village. Now village is a kind of like a very different thing, because of village how very less people are there. Now because of very less people are there, then probably is this thing that ki having a school and maintaining the school over there, government takes like a it's a lot like a basically just kind of like understand. Okay, I'm living in city, so in the school the capacity of the school is almost like let's just say 500 student. So probably 500 student are actually filled in the school, and if the 500 student are actually filling that school, then government actually providing the all those kind of like a goodies and things and that to that school should supposed to be work really well and right. But in the village things might be very different, because in the village are kind of like a something that because of less people, less student are actually available, government are not really kind of like a providing that much. Like it doesn't like government doesn't really think that those school are really essential. Like it's a kind of like a thing that na ki imagine you have a kind of like a hundreds of student and you have 500 student. Okay, yeah, you are the government. Who do you supposed to be kind of like somebody educate them first, 100 or 500? Probably you are kind of like a thinking that ki 500, right? Same thing, 500. Okay, because it's just like that na ki make education 500 people more like as compared to 100 people, because 100 people are kind of like a somebody they are kind of like living in village far away from the city. All the sources and teacher and kind of like somebody all the goodies are really required to make that school a school is a kind of like a very difficult for them. So government are not actually taking that much seriously. One problem. Now because of the government is not taking that much seriously, it creates the ripple effect. Okay, yeah. Ripple effect means what? A ripple effect means like that when you drop a kind of like a something stone in the river or surface of the water, it kind of like a create that ripple effect. Just yeah, the one ripple effect kind of like a creates another ripple effect and things and that. Okay, yeah. So same thing happened. Like basically, if the government are not actually focus on a kind of like a simply make the village school is kind of like a much more better, or they are like a government is not actually serious, then the teacher is not actually serious, the student is not actually serious, the infrastructure is not actually serious. So that's why the education over there is not really serious. Okay, yeah. So it create the ripple effect and things and that and that. I seen that key. Okay, let me kind of like give you um basically sometime I go to the village, my mama's place. Okay, yeah. And in my mama's place, they have a school over there. Okay, and that school condition, it's feel like a ghost house, like literally just like that na ki my mother kind of like somebody tell me that ki when she was in that village, okay, there is no school at that time. Okay, so my mother used to kind of like go to the another village to kind of like somebody study and things and that. Okay, but sooner or later the school was established over there, but because of school established over there, the students are not really that much kind of like going to the school, the consistency was not that much. Okay, yeah. And the most of the time teacher are not actually available. The school condition, it doesn't really look like a school, like it just nothing really at all. It just kind of like a feel like that ki like a ghost house, the school doesn't like it kind of like a feel like that abandoned place, just nothing clean, just kind of like a grass and things. It just feels like that a kind of like somebody, no one kind of like a came to the school and things like that, and which is true, by the way, which is legit true. Okay, yeah. And I was really and this is the only one school in that village, and I was like realized that ki, why there is no school at all and things and that. So I talked to my mama. Mama says this thing that ki most of the kind of like a student who are going to the school to the other village, okay, or taluka. Okay, taluka means like a town, okay, where the school is actually there. And I was really kind of like scared that ki what is, okay, why, okay, why are we not providing that much amount of education in village and things like that? What is exactly the issue? As from government point of perspective, it's a kind of like a some this thing na, the first of all is that ki like, okay, yeah, basically is this thing na, same question is this thing, dude. Okay, yeah, basically is this thing na ki like a what kind of like a somebody like a goodies and things that you provided, like a syllabus, school and things and that to kind of like a somebody school which has a 500 capacity of the student or 100. Obviously everyone select 500 student. Okay, yeah. In city, it's a kind of like a very much easy to kind of like a somebody provide that much amount of education or facility or things and that. But in return, in same thing in village, it does not. So basically is this thing, if I wanted to introduce my Gurukul program, my Gurukul program is my education system. I like it's my Gurukul program. Okay, yeah. So how do I supposed to kind of like make sure that ki villagers will kind of like assembly get that school? That's a very big challenge. Even for me, that's also a big challenge too, because of that ki okay, it's not just kind of like a building the infrastructure and kind of like a things and that. Okay, the problem is that the mentality, okay, the thought process. So basically is this thing, my biggest hurdle of my Gurukul program is that ki providing the basic education, okay, like from first standard to fourth standard, because Gurukul program will initiate from fifth standard. So first standard to fourth standard is very much difficult for me, because I should have to be kind of like a provide the infrastructure, a school, as well as teacher, as well as kind of like somebody creating that better environment and things and that. But how is that thing? What do I kind of like do something differently that our providing or previously education system never done that thing? Because I have entire plan regarding about how should I supposed to execute Gurukul program from the fifth standard, but that first to fourth standard I don't really have that much plan. Okay, yeah, I could able to be say this thing, I will build the infrastructure, I will provide the teacher, I will provide the this and that, but I don't really have a kind of like an inclusive plan regarding about that basic education, and that basic education is very much essential. That first 4 year of student life are very essential, and they will kind of like get to know regarding about reading, writing, and kind of like doing basic mathematics and things and that. And these are very essential, very crucial, by the way, and they should supposed to learn that thing. But how do I supposed to provide that value into the villagers? That is a big problem. Okay, and right now, if I'm kind of like thinking from my point of perspective, what do I supposed to do? I seriously don't have any answer. Yeah, like literally just like that, na ki, like basically in the city you have to implement that much more better, but in the village that's a big problem. Um, okay, but how and why? Like why is that big problem? Okay, like some villages are very small. Okay, yeah, like the average kind of like population of the village are from 1,000 to 2,000. Yeah, 1,000 to 2,000 people. And if I'm kind of like 1,000 to 2,000 people, which is also kind of like somebody maybe less than that, sometime kind of like a 500 people too, like the village of 500 people. So which is kind of like somebody very critical. Like a problem is that na, is in India the village are situated in such a place that providing such a value is more difficult than city. Okay, yeah. Like let's just say there is a kind of like a village in the mountain. The population of the village is, let's just say, 700. If I kind of like simply calculate, the students are there are probably 200 students. Okay, yeah. So in that 200 student, for that 200 student, I have to be kind of like a provide a infrastructure, syllabus, and kind of like a some this thing that keep teachers and things and that. The one obvious answer would be kind of like a thing that na, ki I would provide a digital education, which is kind of like a far more better and very convenient too. Like basically give them a tablet and kind of like let them learn regarding about that. But if I do that thing, it's not like a basically is this thing. Yeah, this will gonna initiate program after the fifth standard, na. Like after the fifth standard, every student will kind of like get the tablet and things and that, and Gurukul program will kind of like initiate from that thing. I don't want a student who is actually from first standard to fourth standard have exposure of any kind of like a screen. Why? In early stages of the human, I wanted that they should supposed to be learn from physical point of perspective, from teacher what they kind of like a teach and things and that. Okay, yeah. Screen is very vulnerable, like not good. Okay, like for the initial period of time, I know that they will kind of like use the screen in the future. They will kind of like buy the mobile phone and things and that, and rest of the world will kind of like set into the mobile phone too, which is true. Okay, yeah. But I don't want the exposure of that screen at early ages of their life. Like maybe I wanted to start it after the fifth standard, not from the beginning. Okay, yeah. So I have to be do this by kind of like a physical activity and things and that. But still, imagine is this thing that a village where have a population of 700 people, student have almost like a 200 people. How do I supposed to kind of like provide that education? That's a big challenge. Okay, yeah. The infrastructure I have to build. That is like basically this thing. There is no kind of like a things. But the problem is also again that thing that in the 200 students, are those 200 students are from 1 to 4 standard or not? Like basically it's this thing na ki, but dude, okay, let me tell you one thing. What is actually my plan? What exactly is this thing? Okay, yeah. So I want to build a Gurukul. Okay, Gurukul program is a program, entire program regarding about the government body and things are actually involved. Gurukul is a place. Okay, a Gurukul is a place where kind of like something as a compound where you have a school, you have hostel, you have a boys hostel, girls hostel, mess, medical services, a mess, also playground and kind of like a something library and things and that. Essential for kind of like something nurture the students and things and that. Okay, the capacity of the Gurukul is actually started from probably 1,000 to 10,000 and things and that. Okay, probably having more capacity, having a kind of like a more kind of like a capacity of Gurukul, which will be kind of like a really good. Okay, yeah, so that more and more students will accumulated, and I will kind of like provide them better value and things and that. Okay, yeah. Now in the Gurukul, student will not gonna come home. Student will kind of like go to the Gurukul. They will study there. They will kind of like play there, have their, like I will control their time and how do I supposed to utilize their, make them better person and things and that and that. I already explained regarding about how the Gurukul things and that. Okay, yeah. And basically this thing, one thing is that student will not gonna go home. Student will kind of like somebody go to the Gurukul and they just study over there. It's a kind of like a hostel. In the weekend might be if they wanted to go to the home they can go, okay, yeah, if they want, if they don't want, yeah, but still existing student will kind of like stay in the Gurukul, okay, yeah, till the kind of like a graduation and things and that, okay, yeah. Now this is the kind of like a Gurukul. So basically is this thing that ki, but this Gurukul actually start from 5th standard, okay, yeah. So basically let's just say a village where have 700 population, and from that 700 population 200 kind of like a students. Now in that 200 students, let's just say kind of like a simply 100 students are actually from 5th standard to 10th or things like that. So they will go to the Gurukul. They will go to the Gurukul and they will study there. By the way, also Gurukul are kind of like a accumulated such a student which is actually kind of like a somebody 200 kilometer on their surrounding. Okay, yeah. Like basically this thing na ki like a kind of like a somebody take a circle of kind of like a 200 kilometer, and in that 200 kilometer all the students who are there they will kind of like go to the Gurukul and things like that, okay, right? Bigger the Gurukul, bigger the diameter, okay, right? So basically this thing that ki the student who are actually kind of like from the 5th standard they will go to the Gurukul, okay, and they will study there, stay there, things and that Gurukul will take care of everything. Now imagine 700 population of the village have a 200 student. In that 200 student, 100 of student are kind of like somebody go to the Gurukul. Remaining 100 student we are actually from 1st standard to 4th standard, and you have to provide that 100 student for better education, things and that. So how is actually possible? Well, that's the one thing is that ki, the conventional method of kind of like a schooling are actually established. Like it's not really there ki the school is not actually there, school is actually been there, okay, yeah. So I just have to kind of like renovate that school, okay, yeah, provide the teacher, make sure that teacher is actually from their village, okay, yeah, so that kind of like somebody that teacher and kind of like somebody that key student will have kind of like a strong connection because the teacher is actually from that village and student is actually from that village, okay, yeah, as also the school management is actually from that village too, okay, yeah. Gram Panchayat and things will kind of like control and things and at their village. So that basically is this thing na ki if like basically is this thing that na ki they will have their kind of like a village, they will have their kind of like a school, and the Gram Panchayat will kind of like control their school and things and that. As also is this thing government means me I will gonna provide the as much as better value and things and that. But still is this thing that now I wanted to like I don't want a teacher who actually come from different city to go into that school. No, I don't want that. I want that a student, I want that teacher is actually from that village, okay, yeah. And as also the principal and management of the team is also from that village too, okay, yeah. I don't want to hire from different another city and things, no, from that village, and they will kind of like provide the basic education to those 100 people, okay, yeah. Regarding how much they possible and things and that. Regarding about the textbooks and things and that I will gonna provide regarding about the stuff that kind of like simply books and things and that. But the most my goal is that ki I wanted that those student who can able to be read, who can able to be write, and who can able to do basic mathematics, oh yeah. And if though and as also is this thing whatever they are kind of like learning, are they understanding or not, okay, yeah. These are kind of like 3 things, these are kind of like 4 things that I wanted from that till the 4th standard of student, okay, yeah. And if those kind of like some credibilities actually match, then obviously it would be really good, okay, yeah. problem will be there, like I always understand there is a problem will be there, okay, yeah. How about the teacher? Like if I kind of like hire a teacher who is actually from that local, will they credible? Like will they kind of like provide that quality of education? Well, basically is this thing na ki first of all I will gonna provide a very handsome salary to a teacher, okay, yeah. And obviously like the problem will not gonna solve by the kind of like a salary, no, definitely not. But if I have to give them a kind of like a very handsome salary, obviously I am expecting that they are kind of like a performing really well. Obviously I would kind of like a give them training regarding about that how should you supposed to teach their student and things and that. Okay, yeah, so that they will kind of like perform really well. But how do you so sure about that thing? Like how do you so sure, like how do you so sure about that those teacher will kind of like simply come to the school and they will things and that, because it all actually happen locally and you are completely unaware of that. What if the teacher who kind of like simply never really come to the school and they're kind of like taking the salary every month? Yeah, that's really good point. Basically this thing, it does not happen like that way. Why? Let me kind of like tell you. The teacher who is not actually come from different city, the teacher is actually from that local na. Okay, yeah. So if the teacher who not actually come to the school, the gram panchayat or anything will kind of file a complaint regarding about that. Okay, yeah. And as also is this thing na ki like the chances of not teacher will not gonna come to the school will kind of like something very less over there. Why? Because of that ki teacher is actually from that local na. Like the like basically it's the distance between the kind of like your home to your school is a kind of like a very less. Okay, yeah. So basically that teacher will kind of like go to that school. It's not really that they will kind of like things and that. Obviously I would kind of like develop some sort of kind of like something that attendance system or things and that, so that I would verify that kind of like a teacher would kind of like come to the school and things and that. Okay. But this is thing na ki the possibility of teacher will not gonna come to the school will be very less because I'm hiring those teacher from local. Okay, like from that village. Okay, so this would be kind of like a much more convenient and much more kind of like a something easy for me to kind of like provide that much education. Regarding about the quality of education, like what kind of like education that they are providing, I kind of like give them training regarding about how they should supposed to be do it. Okay, challenge number 1. Challenge number 2, language. Okay, that's a big problem. I'm living in India and the language are very widely. I am from Maharashtra. My regional language is Marathi. But if you went to Gujarat, they are Gujarati, Kerala, Tamil, Haryanvi, Malayalam, lot of language. So many language. Like if you cross 100 kilometers, you will kind of like find a new language. So basically this thing, and English is a kind of like one of the biggest hurdle, because like usually is this thing, since the media is actually kind of like tell us that English is a kind of like a very essential and things, and you have to speak more English and things, and as also I'm speaking very much English too. Okay, but the problem is that a student will kind of like feel a kind of like a big barrier that they will kind of like try to understand this language, and they will kind of like started learning education from this English language, a fancy language. But my education will not gonna provide that. No? Like basically basic education will gonna provide in their regional language. Okay, yeah. It's not really that they would kind of like learn something very different language. No. Okay, yeah. In the Gurukul, I will kind of like train them slowly regarding about English. Okay. But why? Why are you kind of like focus on English and things like that? Okay, like I'm not really focused, but English is a global language. Somewhat something in their life they will gonna utilize that. And for the personal development, for the communication, English is matter, dude. You will not gonna interact your rest of the life with such a people who are actually from their local city. No, you will gonna interact with the global people. And I wanted that my students should supposed to interact with the global people to kind of like somebody make them kind of like somebody that can represent India in the world stage. Obviously, they need such a language that most of people actually speak. English is global language. So this is a kind of like a thing that okay. So but I will not gonna implement English language as early as their life. No. I will gonna implement the regional language like Marathi, Malayalam, Gujarati, Hindi, Tamil Nadu, Tamil, whatever the language, the regional language, first to 4th standard. After the 4th standard, when they will enter in the Gurukul program, I will slowly kind of like implement towards the English regarding about like basically when they enter in the Gurukul program, I will have control their time, control their what they learn, control of that key what they should supposed to do and things and that. Okay, yeah. And when I have control regarding about time and what they learn and things and that, I will kind of like slowly increase regarding about their English implementation and things and that, because I wanted that they wanted to speak English more. Okay, yeah. But what about regional language? Like, do you don't want to kind of like consider the regional language? Like, I wanted, it's not really that I am completely opposed towards that thing. Okay, yeah. But still, is this thing that it's a very heavy debate regarding about the language. Because let me tell you one thing now. I wanted that students should supposed to be learn, understand the concept. If they understand the concept in English or Marathi, I just wanted that understand. Okay, yeah. If the student are kind of credible enough to understand this thing in English language, okay. If the student who are credible enough to understand this concept in Marathi or any kind of regional language, that is also okay for me. I'm not kind of somebody letting them kind of choose the language and things and that. I'm letting them to choose the language that they wanted to learn and things and that. Okay, yeah. But still, it's basically this thing now. Okay, yeah. If I'm gonna say, in Marathi, there is a kind of a word name atom. Okay, atom means a small thing. Okay, yeah. Do you know what is actually it says in Marathi? It says anu, and electron says renu. Okay, yeah. Some of the kind of some Marathi concept that I just don't know. Literally, just think that na. Okay, yeah. Sandarbh sahit spashtikaran, or basically this thing na. Right now I am so aware of English that it kind of felt more easily for me to explain my concept and things in English. But if I kind of try to explain this in Marathi, I might gonna fumble. Okay, yeah. Is it wrong? No, from my point of perspective, because I wanted to explain my concept, and if I'm using my English language and I'm okay with that thing, I'm good. Regional language, I'm not against it, but it's kind of a thing that my future went bright when I speak more English. So why I cannot learn English? Okay, yeah. It's not really that I'm against with the regional language, but it's a kind of a thing that I see my bright future over there in English. If I stick with Marathi or any kind of regional language, then my bright future is intact in this specific region. I might not represent this thing in global stage level because I cannot speak English. Okay, yeah. I'm not forcing them to English more, but I will slowly, in the Gurukul program, I will have control their time and effort and kind of something what they learn and things like that. And that I slowly wanted to push them a little bit of towards the English and things because it's the global language, and I wanted to represent my student in global level, and they will kind of represent India in global level. They need a kind of a language in English. Okay, yeah. And regarding about the first 4th standard, strictly regional language. Yeah, strictly regional language. What kind of a language they kind of a villager speaks, I will kind of tell them regarding about that. My goal for what is actually I want that students should supposed to be read, understand what they read, write, do basic mathematics. These are kind of 4 things that I want, that till the 4th standard, if the student who kind of learn all those things, I'm okay, good. Okay, yeah. And regional language, yes, let them kind of do. And also there is no exam at all. Okay, probably sorry, I have to give the exam because in the first 4 standard there is no kind of a credibility to kind of somebody that how do I supposed to make sure that the particular student is kind of learning or understanding or kind of a writing and things. Obviously I have to do exam, but that exam would be kind of very less difficult, kind of try to my goal is to kind of somebody, if they're able to write, read and do basic mathematics and things and that. Okay, if they pass on that, the exam will kind of understand. If they pass on that, that is good, things and that. In this particular, this might be a kind of solve the problem, probably, I think. Question number 2 was that what structural factor in our system are responsible for creating those gaps? Same thing is that why does kind of having those gaps, basically what is at least this thing, why does kind of a student who are kind of fall behind, what is actually reason for that they fall behind? English is the first more essential thing. Okay, yeah. But I already talked about the ancient English regarding about language and things and that. Okay, yeah. So, okay. Now what kind of things is this thing? Influence. Yeah, influence is kind of a very much essential thing. Okay, yeah. So let me kind of tell you. When you went to the village, there is a very different culture over there. In city, parents are kind of like assembly force you to educate, learn things, that and that. Why? Because of that, ki, because of they learn, they are kind of like doing a job in the city, and that's why they are kind of like life is really good. But in the village, things are very different, because in the village, most of the parents are not educated. Okay, yeah, they might gonna educate, but very less. They might not understand the value of education. They will, but probably is this enough. They will not gonna like basically is this enough. The problem is that now I convince enough, but it's okay. Like understand the practical point of perspective now. Okay, so in the village, the problem is that he their child should supposed to be kind of like assembly get learn earning money as early as possible. Okay, yeah. So what they want villagers that ki when they kind of like a complete basic education like a 10th standard and things and that they will kind of like a make sure that their child should supposed to be kind of like a started earning money, so they are kind of like a somebody let him kind of like a work on their farm or kind of like a go somewhere and things and that. Also regarding about farming is a kind of like a very heavy duty task. It really required a lot of manpower. Okay, yeah. And they actually kind of like a hire people to kind of like a do the work in their farms. Obviously they really required a kind of like a lot of helping hands, and obviously that helping hand might be came from their kids. Okay, yeah. So parents are actually be more kind of like a thing that ki make sure that helping hand is actually came from their kids. Why do I supposed to hire somebody? Because obviously when I hire I have to give them money and things and that. But if I have my kids, then they would kind of like help me in the farm. But in return, they shouldn't supposed to go to the school, right? So this is a kind of like something I have to convince them that ki let them go to the school. Okay, yeah. Now regarding about the education, that is a one big important thing is that okay, yeah, every teacher, every kind of like somebody, every parents will kind of like let them learn till the first standard to fourth standard. These are the basic education. Okay, yeah. And after 20 years, this might be influenced a lot because of that. The parents wanted to kind of like teach them regarding about what is actually kind of like a somebody first standard to fourth standard. Okay, yeah. And after that, they will went to the Gurukul now. So basically, after they went to the Gurukul, the parents would not be kind of like a take care of them na. Like basically, I would gonna take care of everything. Like I would gonna kind of like somebody that ki they would food, their health, their everything. Okay, yeah. Parents would not kind of like pay any kind of like a single amount of money to the Gurukul, nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. So I'm kind of like taking their burden na. I'm kind of like taking their burden to kind of like somebody utilize their kind of like somebody time and intelligence for better thing and that. Okay, yeah. Everything is actually solved when the student actually went to the Gurukul. Okay, when they went to the Gurukul, then yeah, like basically this thing that I would be like I know what do I supposed to do with that student and kind of like make them kind of like a better citizen, better people, better kind of like things and that. I already kind of like decide regarding about what is that Gurukul and things and that. The problem is that the first initial kind of like assembly first standard, fourth standard. Okay, yeah. Influence is kind of like a very big problem. But probably if the parents who kind of like taught them regarding about teach them like kind of like let them kind of like give the permission to kind of like kind of like somebody learn first standard to fourth standard, it would be really good. Okay, yeah. If not like if the parents would not let them kind of like go to the school, then probably is this thing that na ki I have to kind of like awareness camp. Okay, yeah. That awareness camp would kind of like somebody like advertisement and things and that, so that kind of like somebody that parents should supposed to be things and that. But I think that this issue might not be kind of like a much more bigger when I will initiate my program. Why? Because I will initiate this program after 20 years. 20 year means like that ki right now 2026, it might be kind of like a 2046 probably. Okay, yeah. So over that period of time, probably is this thing this like basically this is not that everyone will gonna aware regarding about how much important is the education. So probably this might be not gonna issue at the moment, I think, probably. Okay, yeah. So but still is this thing I'm not kind of like thinking the realistic point of perspective. Why? Because let's just say if I'm thinking that ki Gurukul can solve the problem, but do you really understand that ki like when you became that particular person and when you implement this program in the government and they will allow you to kind of like initiate this Gurukul program, Can you build the Gurukul within a kind of like assembly within a year or within a 2 year? No, definitely not. And you have to build a lot of Gurukul in entire city. Okay, this might be kind of like a create chaos. Obviously, is this thing when the Gurukul actually built, then probably is this thing the problem will not go solve. But before like a till that Gurukul build, like a there is a problem now. Like even after the student who kind of like somebody complete the 4th standard and they will kind of like went to the 5th standard, they will not come to the Gurukul because Gurukul is not actually built up. Okay, till that period of time, like some certain period of time. So for that particular period of time, how do I supposed to execute? Okay, so for that particular period of time, till the Gurukul made, I already kind of like somebody provide a tablet. That tablet will kind of like somebody a student will kind of like learn and things and that. But still, that is also big problem too. Okay, because they are not in Gurukul. Okay, and I am not controlling their time. So if I am not controlling their time, they might gonna utilize that tablet or whatever the kind of like goodies or facility that I'm providing. They will kind of utilize for wrong purposes. Example, I will gonna provide the tablet for Gurukul and things and that. But what if they will not use that thing? They will kind of use that tablet for like watching stupid videos and things and that. So how is that thing? Yeah, that's a big problem too. Because of that, even if I kind of like initiate the Gurukul program and building the Gurukul, like basically almost like let's just say, like I have to build almost like a 5,000, 10,000 Gurukul in all around this country. So that's a big problem. If I make them hurry, then probably it might not gonna initiate that much better. So I have to be kind of like a set that kind of like some things that na ki phases. Okay, probably Gurukul program will initiate. It will not gonna initiate like when I launch. No, it will initiate by step. Okay, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Okay, it has to be kind of like some sort of protocol. I wanted Gurukul. That's a very essential thing, because when I have a Gurukul, then it might add so much amount of value. I would not gonna initiate my Gurukul program if I didn't rebuild the Gurukul. So basically, I have to spend a lot of amount of money in infrastructure after I kind of like somebody approval to kind of like initiate the Gurukul. Okay, and basically this thing na ki I have to be kind of like I don't know at the moment, but I don't want to make hurry. Okay, even after I initiate the Gurukul program, I will not gonna kind of like launch directly. I will kind of like be more focused on kind of like simply Gurukul and build the Gurukul, as well as I don't know at the moment. At the moment, I don't know how do I supposed to execute this thing. Okay, because that's a big problem. Okay, okay, whatever, this is a kind of like a problem that I might understand that how do I supposed to execute this thing. It's not just kind of like somebody the word that I say and implement will gonna happen, because the expectation and reality is actually far much different, and I accept that thing. So I have to figure it out. I have to make a plan regarding about that how do I supposed to execute, so that when I implement, Gurukul at least will be there, or at least maybe Gurukul will kind of like take. I don't know at the moment. I don't have any kind of like answer. Okay, but let's just give in the shot. Okay, so the question number 1, like what group of students are falling behind? The group of students who are actually living village and things and that. For that particular perspective, I already kind of like give the solution regarding about that how it actually happen. Hire the local teacher and things and that. Okay, what structural kind of like a problem are kind of like what kind of like somebody like what is actually kind of like a failing behind, like what is actually problem for kind of like a some factor are responsible for this failing behind. English is a kind of like one of the biggest problem. I already talk about that English regarding about that and that. Okay, yeah. And also regarding about the influence means like that ki parents not allow them to kind of like learn and teach and things and that. But this might be issue will not gonna happen. Like I will when I will initiate this program after 20 year means 2046. At least till that time, actually most of the people are actually aware regarding about how much important is education. So this might be not an issue. But even if there is an issue, I will kind of like simply make sure that ki file a basically a kind of like advertisement campaign or things and that, so that I would kind of like somebody villagers parents to kind of like allow them to kind of like go to the kind of like a gurukul and things and that, go to the kind of like a school and things like that, at least 1 to 4 standard. Okay, after the 5th standard I would have gurukul, and gurukul would just take them kind of like a next level. Okay, then I would actually control everything regarding what in the gurukul. This is the kind of like answer. Some of the answer I'm not really don't know how to supposed to execute, but I'm thinking that I don't know at the moment. This is it. Thank you.